We had three different events that took place in about a 3.5 year period. It began with the death of our twins at birth. You come out different on the other side, and so we thought that was our test, and that was that God had sustained us through that. Second part of this was that I woke up crippled with rheumatoid arthritis and stayed 7 months on disability. Went for over a year without wearing shoes, and it was just kind of round two, and still we knew that God had sustained us through all of this. And then I ended up, after having seen a fruitful ministry and knowing that God did it, I ended up being set on the shelf ministry-wise, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't give myself away. And all these doors that had been opened in the past were all of a sudden shut. And people would ask us, why aren't you teaching somewhere, or why aren't you being a pastor somewhere? And I had no good answer at the time for that. Mark 10:35 through about 41 really would be the theme of the book, about the cup and the glory. I thought I was studying suffering. What I was actually doing was studying the glory of God. I didn't know that. God knew that I was studying His glory. James and John come to Jesus and say, we want you to do whatever it is we ask of you. He says, what is it you want me to do? He says, we want to sit in your glory, one on your right and one on your left. Jesus says, you do not know what you are asking for. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism with which I'm baptized? And so, to summarize all this, it really is about the glory of God. Drinking the cup relates to matters of suffering, matters of discipleship, matters of loneliness, matters of God taking us from point A to point B, a lot of times not understanding anything at all about that. We think in terms of God waving His hand with the cup and the glory. What the answer that Jesus gave to James and John was that there is a process, there's a development, there's a building up and a breaking down first before rebuilding in order for them to sit. That's why He would say, you do not know what it is that you are asking for. And so it puts the focus onto the glory of God. It takes the focus away. I mean, it's not that we don't cry when babies die, and it's not that you don't wrestle through things like rheumatoid arthritis. But what we do here is temporary. What we do with God is eternal. And the glory of God is an aspect of eternity that we are going to share with Him. There's a sense where a lot of times people will go to pastors for answers. I mean, you're going to deal with people who are grieving. You're going to deal with people who have physical diseases. And you're also going to deal with a lot of people, whether it's themselves or someone else, that has no idea what God is doing at that particular time. And you will not know the answer a lot of times until after the fact. It was about a 10-year period in some cases to look back and see why God did what He did. And so a lot of times the questions that we have are more in regard to our own life and where we're going to end up, and why did God all of a sudden start closing doors, and what has happened, so that you go from a time of blessing and a time of visible fruit until a time of kind of no fruit. That may be very applicable to a lot of the pastors who read the book. So in other words, it may be very important to them personally. And of course, you can only pass on the comfort that you yourself have received. I didn't know any of the content of the cup and the glory. It was the situation in the life, the severity of the situation, that made me seek answers from God's Word. Unless I'd had the questions, I never would have gone after the answers. When I ended up writing the cup and the glory, and I was just writing chapters, I didn't know I was writing a book. I didn't know it was going to be put into this. I was just finding answers from the Word. Nothing about my circumstances changed immediately. It was my perspective. It was my perception of God that changed. It was my heart and my head that needed adjusting. And I think the cup and the glory is a heart and a head adjusting book before God. People who read this book will see that the chapters are connected, that they build one on the other. We don't start with the glory, we start with the wilderness, and we start with the cup. The glory comes to the end. But what it does is that it puts the focus on the glory of God, that we are going to have a home with Him forever. This is very, very temporary, what we have down here. Eternity is a long, long time.